Welcome to episode 167 of Beyond the Brick. I'm Joshua Hanlon.
And I'm Matthew Kay.
And we'd like to thank Brickmania for supporting this episode of Beyond the Brick. Our featured Brickmania product this week is the M113 Armored Personnel Carrier. So if you're working on any of those military, maybe Vietnam War mocks, this is a great build for that. You can check that out and all of the other products Brickmania has to offer at brickmania.com. And we appreciate their support of the show. And now joining us this week, we have a great guest. We have Markus joining us from Germany. He is 22 years old, a user interface designer, and he is the R-Lug ambassador for the German LEGO Star Wars-centric lug and forum Imperium der Stein, if I pronounced that correctly. So thank you for joining us, Markus. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
And if you just want to start off with maybe a little bit of your background in the LEGO community when you first started getting involved online, that kind of thing.
I started like 5 or 6 years ago, I guess, when I started to become more serious about the hobby, like not playing in my living room anymore, but like being serious, getting serious about it. And I started looking on the internet for it, and started on the biggest German forum, which is 1000 Steine, and it basically went downhill from there. I got to my first lug meetup. I met some other serious AFOLs, and then it only got worse, and I went to my first event and went crazy on Bricklink over the years, and became more and more international when I went to Dublin, Ireland to study, and ran into the local lug there. So, yeah, pretty much how
So, Dark Age or no Dark Age?
If you count 6 months of not having access to my bricks in Ireland as a Dark Age, then yes, but I don't think in general that I had a Dark Age.
More of a dim age.
Yeah, not even that. I think I was still active in the community, like online, but it didn't build.
Okay, very cool. So, what do you think? Like growing up in Europe, just is Lego omnipresent around you? Do you think that had any impact on you?
Yeah, sure. Like Lego for sure is the most well-known toy around Europe, and like even my mom and my dad, they used to have Lego as when they were children. So of course Lego is always around you. Like it's the #1 toy product I say in Europe, or at least in Germany, that is, because Germany is the biggest market for Lego. So I had Lego ever since I was like 1.5 years old, or maybe a year old. I distinctly remember swooshing around big, huge Duplo planes in the living room of my grandparents. And every birthday and every Christmas, I would get like at least one box that rattled, like, ooh, that was Lego. So Lego is always there, always around you. I think it's great that way.
Definitely. And so Denmark is very close to Germany. Any trips to Billund as a child, by any chance?
My parents treated me with a trip when I was like 5 or 6, and like it's still a 10-hour drive from my place, so it was like a long drive as a child. But then it was a week in Legoland and a week around all the cool bricks and everything, so it was like tremendous fun. It was like the best holiday of my childhood, I guess. Yeah, it was wet and rainy, and all of the attractions were quite empty because it was wet and rainy. But it was quite fun, and it was like the first time when I jumped into like a pile of bricks that were like more than I had at home. So that was great.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm sure that definitely makes for great memories when you can travel to a place like Legoland Denmark there. Very cool. So then, I guess I'd be interested, as you were talking about how Lego is kind of the most popular toy there when you were growing up, what were some of the other toys you had that you would say, was there anything kind of similar in Lego as far as like educational type toys or things like that?
The only distinctive big assortment of toys that I had apart from Lego was Playmobil. I don't know if you have those in the US.
Yes.
Because that's another German that's a German toy that is quite popular. But apart from that, I don't really had anything that was like big or as big as Lego or as popular to me. I used to have a little model train layout or something, but it was always Lego and then something else.
Definitely. Now, by any chance, what was the attitude towards kind of continuing to play with Lego beyond like the age of 12? Because I know personally, just like in America, there tends to be this attitude, and I think this is kind of going away. But like oh, Lego's a kid's toy, you can't be. But now I think there's this consensus that oh, Lego's cool. Was that true in Germany for you?
No, I think it was actually quite similar to what you experienced in the US. When I was like 12 or 13, my parents were kind of hoping I would get more serious and do some more serious hobby-related stuff. But as the years came by, and as I got like when I got blogged for the first time on the Buttersbrick or something, they finally got kind of, yeah, it's getting serious. Better support him and not like sabotage his favorite hobby or something. I was obviously getting into some kind of dark age when I was around the usual age of dark age teens, which was like 12, 13 or something. But we have a Legoland right around the corner where I live, so that opened up and it just got me back into it, and ever since I just stayed.
And so now, like, I remember for myself that sort of same time period. What was like the instance or the event that kind of made you realize that you were far from alone and that there were tons of like people just super into Lego, like AFOLs, all that kind of stuff? Was there a particular internet search that you did?
As I mentioned, I found this very big German forum, and then I went to my first Lug meetup, which was just like an hour away from me. And I first met like 20 people or something that also were into Lego and that were much older than me, so it was like this serious thing. But my first event was, I think, a small event in Berlin, in the capital of Germany. And that was the first time where I actually exhibited something, and that suddenly made it real. I visited Lego events before, like where friends of mine were exhibiting or something, but it wasn't never really something I wanted to do until I did my first one, and then I got hooked. And I think it was that one event in Berlin back in 2011 or 12. I'm not quite sure because it's a while back, and I did a couple of events since then. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. And we wanted to make sure we covered some of your great builds that you've done over the years. So if people follow you on Flickr, they've obviously seen a lot of your really cool work that you've done. So we had a few of our favorite builds that we picked out. And I think that the first one we wanted to start with was your Disney Princess Christmas ornaments that you did. So if you can talk a little bit about this build and some of the design process behind it.
Yeah, of course. I did those little Disney princesses for our Christmas tree because we use those little tiny baubles that Lego does, where they have like bricks in it or like little designs or whatever. And we use them every single year to decorate our Christmas tree. And for this year, my mom asked me if I could come up with something that was more coherent, like one theme that all the different baubles had, because usually we just put in like little builds or a minifigure, but they weren't connected. So this year my mom asked me if I could come up with something cool, and for some reason I arrived at the Disney line, the Disney princesses, because that's something that I think everybody likes and everybody can relate to, because everybody grew up with Disney movies and the Disney princesses. And I started designing. I think it was Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and just to see if it was possible to do Little Princess in that scale, because obviously you need to be able to do the distinctive features like the hair or the dress or the colors of the dress. And then it just went on from there. I did Belle and the Beast first. And then I went on to pretty quickly to do Snow White because of the hair. And due to the hair, because it's the same, I went on to make Leia and R2-D2. Yeah, I guess Leia is not technically a Disney princess, but ever since they bought LucasArts, she technically is a Disney princess. And I just designed more and more. After I had the first design down, I went into Eldraw and designed like 18 or 20 figures. Like basically every single Disney princess or franchise kind of thing they have, like Aladdin or Peter Pan and all that stuff. And then I selected like 5 or 6 or 7 that were the most recognizable or the most interesting or the most colorful even. And then I arrived at, I guess, Leia, Ariel, Snow White, Tiana from Princess and the Frog, and the 2 Frozen girls. And everybody seems to love them. I put them on a Christmas card even, and they are very recognizable and very cute, and I think I'll keep doing that kind of style next year, maybe with different characters. I have friends requesting Star Wars, so we'll see.
Now, the one thing I first thought when I saw these creations was I did not know that minifig hands came in as many colors as you have kind of used in these models. Did you have to source these from like Bricklink or?
Oh yeah,
I see like a light aqua.
Wild on Bricklink. I went wild on Bricklink. I used the Lego customer service because some of the hands are only in like a torso that was, I don't know, in one set, so Bricklink is really expensive for that. And then I bought a couple of collectible minifigures just for the hands because the Light Aqua hands only came out in the Monster series that came out last October or something. So yeah, I went crazy with the hands, but the hand being my favorite Lego part because it's so versatile, I didn't really mind having to buy a ton of them. So and the end result was totally worth it. So I've got a lot of hands now.
Definitely. And talk about like illegal building techniques, because I know is it when you put a plate or like a tile into a clip, that's illegal according to like Lego, right?
It depends on the clip you use. They actually re-engineered their 1x1 tile with a clip 2 years ago or a year ago when they brought out the helicarrier, the giant helicarrier. And ever since, there's this new clip that makes it legal to put a tile or a plate or something into a clip. But the ones I use, they have more clutch power and they are easy to break when you put tiles in there. So if you love your Lego, don't do it. But it just I often resort to illegal techniques because they just make everything look more intricate, more detailed, more cool.
If you're not building with illegal techniques, you're doing something wrong. That's just my personal opinion, but very cool builds. And I'll be interested to see. I like the scale. It's so small. It's so like approachable. So doing more in that same, it almost seems like kind of like a cube dude or something, just this really approachable kind of like solid concept, and that you can just kind of iterate and sort of literally build upon. So very cool, very cool.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a really great build. And then the next one we wanted to talk about here is kind of something very different from that last build. This is your Galactic Racer, the Midnight Bolt X. So this was another really cool kind of small racer spaceship that you made here. So really cool colors you used as well. If you can talk a little bit about this build.
Sure, I actually have it here because it's one of the few builds that I kept alive after the last sorting session. So it actually looks like this in the flesh. Like it's a wick wiper. It has like the distinctive features of a wick wiper. Mm-hmm. Those racers are part of some kind of fake online game I came up with, or a fake racing game that I came up with, because I wanted to create like space racers that were kind of connected to each other, like where I could experiment with new styles or colors, because usually you do like one kind of thing, and then you do the next one, and they are not connected to each other, and I found that a bit boring. So I came up with this racing game, and every single one of those races has like those turbines, those silver, actually silver wheel pieces, I think, and I then actually just go to my collection and look at the cool colors that I have lying around, because I love colors, so I usually empty Bricklink stores when I find rare colors that I don't have yet. Like my whole collection is color sorted, or most of it. Like I have like these sorting trays, so it's just one color each, maybe more depending on how many I have. So I have the whole color lineup that I have there, and then I just go into the pieces and look what looks cool. It's as easy as that, and I just combine them into shapes that look kind of speedy or cool, and it just goes from there. The blue one was kind of harder because I had to fit in the whole requirements for the wick wiper business, and I actually struggle with that because it's not so easy if you start with like a kind of organic shape that is based on just the shape of bricks, and then you have to add in like, I don't know, side wings or prongs or a tail or something. So in the end it came together. It's very interesting what you can do if you just limit yourself to a certain amount of pieces or a certain color, because it only limits you to what you have available in that color, and that leads to sometimes very interesting results.
It's certainly like when you start putting like limiting factors on your building, then like cool things kind of really start happening. Because if you sort of have an unlimited palette and everything is available to you, I find that sometimes it's just too open. There's not enough constraints.
Yeah, it's too easy. It forces you to think more creatively or more about like shapes and how you put them together. If you have everything, it's just, I don't know. It's way too easy in my opinion. So that's why I decided to put those constraints on myself, and people seem to like them. So it seems to be successful, and I'm dying to make more because there are so many Lego colors that are cool and awesome.
What is your favorite Lego color? Just if I might be able to ask.
Sure. I don't think I'm able to just determine one. I'd say it's either medium azure or light aqua. Probably the former, because in light aqua there's only like a handful of pieces available. It's like so sad how little there is. But medium azure is pretty cool.
Definitely, definitely. And just getting back to this creation real quick, one of my favorite things about it is the way that you've kind of presented the creation, and this sort of carries out, throughout all of your builds. Do you like edit the background and it has all these amazing graphics? Talk about that process. What is that like? It almost seems like that's as much a part of the build as the build itself, just to like a certain extent.
Sure. I love presenting my models in a setting that makes sense for them. So when I came up with this whole computer game idea, I obviously thought about how to properly present like 10 or maybe 20 of these fighters or these speeders in one layout and one model, because obviously you should be able to see that, oh, there's this one, but there are obviously also those 4 or 5 other models that are connected to this. So I came up with this I don't know, I'd say vehicle selection thing that you have in racing games all over the place, and then I just designed the interface elements one by one, and came up with a sushi background, which is just a photograph of, I think it was a motorbike, and then I just blurred it very, very heavily, so it looked very speedy. And it just, like, the more natural it looks, I'm not sure if you could say natural about a space creation, but the more realistic it looks, the better I feel, because the more immersed the viewer gets into the build, and it just makes the creation more believable in a way. So that's why I tend to do it for everything, and it just moves the creation from like, yeah, that's kind of cool, to, oh, this is amazing, because there's this whole thing, like the whole creation becomes something else, because it just I don't know, it becomes a scene. It's not just this build anymore. It becomes a scene with a surrounding. You see where it's supposed to be in, and it just makes it pop in a way.
You're adding like lots and lots of context to it. Now, are you using Adobe programs to edit this, like a Photoshop, Illustrator?
Yeah, sure. I use a ton of Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop all my life, so I don't really have a huge experience with GIMP. I started like 10 years ago or 12 years ago with Photoshop when I was a teenager or something, and it just went from there. So it's Photoshop. Every now and then I use Illustrator for like a tiny detail here and there, for like decals or for user interface elements or something. But it's mainly, and most of it, it's Photoshop. Yeah.
And now, as far as a career goes, you're a user interface designer, right?
Yeah.
So does that kind of have some interplay? Are you that because of Lego, or does that kind of impact the way you look at Lego, or the way that you sort of, I guess, this presentation screams like interface design, I guess you could say?
It usually depends. It obviously depends what I do. For this game thing, you can kind of see that I have that background, but in general, it doesn't impact it too much, because it's much rather the photography than the user interfaces or whatever. Because usually I just have to replace a background and correct some colors or add a vignette or something. So that's usually something photography related, which I studied for 3 years, so I should be able to do that stuff. But in general, it's just the user interface stuff is something separated from Lego, because it's just it doesn't connect at too many fronts. So it's design, but it's a different medium in a way.
Exactly.
Looking through your Flickr feed, I was impressed with how kind of diverse your builds are. You've got, we've talked about a few already, and you kind of got the space, you had the Christmas ornaments and all of that. Do you view yourself as like a certain theme builder for the most part, or is it just kind of whatever strikes your fancy, whatever your inspiration is at that moment?
I try to be as varied as possible. When I started out, I was madly into castle and only castle, and after a while I got bored, so I started exploring other things. And a great thing to do that is the contest. Like I joined various contests, for example, the steampunk contest over on From Bricks to Rotens, where I just had to create a very different type of things. And ever since then, I keep doing contests just because they force me to do something else, and I love it because it just opens up so much. Like if you're limiting yourself to just castle, which is totally fine. There are a lot of very good castle builders, but for me personally, it's just very limiting to just build in one field, and then I just like to explore, let's say, space, or I don't know, just something else that gets your creative juices flowing, and that forces you to think outside the constraints that you usually have. Like if I always build castle, I know how to build castle in and out, but I might suck at spaceships or something because I never have to touch the topic. So I just love that.
Mm-hmm. Try to diversify. That's always a good thing to do. Gets you building different kind of builds.
Yeah.
And another really neat build that I wanted to make sure we talked about is your Red Rocket refueling station from Fallout 4 here, which is just so full of really neat details, a really interesting build. So if you can talk about some of the design process behind this, and some of it, was there, as you worked with, was there like kind of photos from the game, or how did that work as far as your inspiration for the build?
I started with the Red Rocket gas station way before the game came out.
Okay.
Fallout 4 was unveiled, like it was announced last year in the summer, I think in June or something, and they published with the announcement. They published 3 concept art pieces, and one of them was a concept art of this Red Rocket gas station that. It looked incredibly cool, and it was just like a rundown Red Rocket gas station with the rocket on top of it in the midst of like a post-apocalyptic forest, and it just had this very, very cool feeling to it, and I decided there and then that I have to build that, and that I need to build it before the game comes out, because afterwards I'm obviously stuck in a certain computer game for eternity. So when the concept art was there, I began researching if there was any other material, and thankfully, with the announcement, they published some videos that showed the location in game, or at least parts of it. Like the protagonist was always running up to the model, or up to the building, and then it would cut out like 10 seconds before, or 2 seconds before I would see that one thing that I needed to see for my build. So I started out in June just doing some little sketch models. Like I started designing the trees because I knew I wanted to have those characteristic trees from the concept art, and I decided I designed the little robot that is like below the sign. Just have little bits here and there to see if the idea worked, and if the concept was working. And then I didn't do anything until 2 weeks before the game came out, because I had other stuff to build for other events and for contests and stuff. And 2 weeks before the announcement of, or the published date of Fallout, and coincidentally an event in Munich where I wanted to display the whole thing, I had to start building very frantically. So I basically designed the whole, or came up with the whole layout in like 1.5 weeks or something, building basically day and night. And I started out with the building. It actually has a full interior that nobody will ever see because I fucked up the photos. So for my words. And I came out, like I started out with the building because it's the most
iconic, right?
The most iconic, yes. And the building itself is square, and it's double the size of the one in-game, which I found out later, because while I was building, some screenshots were leaked from the game or something, so every time there was a new screenshot, I was like frantically looking at it if I still was correct and whatever, and 2 hours or something before I was done with it, I found out that the whole building was twice as wide as it should be. But thankfully those screenshots came, so I was able to design like little details, like the gas price sign on the left next to the rocket, or I don't know. It just came together very well, and I used a ton of screenshots, a ton of video, a ton of concept art, and yeah, I don't know. It just came together very quickly because I was forced to. And I think one thing I should mention is that the whole thing was built just to work as this one photograph, because I knew how I wanted to photograph it, like in this widescreen panoramic look, and that it was like framed by those trees and the electricity lines on the left and stuff like that. So I always looked while building if it was looking good from that one perspective that I was going to use. So I had to rearrange trees every now and then, and I had to move the whole building by like 4 or 5 studs pretty much 2 days before I was done, and it was a very organic process, I think. And I just kept detailing. There are like little gas stations or little gas pumps, I think that's the word, and little electric motors in the background. There's a car lying around. The game character is obviously there with his dog. It's just I guess it just shows how much I love the universe of Fallout, and how much I love all the detailing, and it's, yeah, I don't know if that made sense. I
It
hope.
makes a lot of sense. So you're saying that if you look at it from a different angle, like it's meant to be looked at from this angle. But if you like it's not, doesn't look right. Like the roof's not really right. It's like it is meant for this shot, right?
It is meant for this shot, but it also worked quite well to be exhibited on an event in Munich I was. Even though like the roof is something I shouldn't talk about because it's like this ongoing joke in my lug, because I used the base plate and flipped it because I didn't have enough tiles to cover the whole roof. So I just used the base plate because the building is 48 by 48 in dimensions. So it worked quite well. But ever since I have to deal with this. Oh, you're using base plates. But yeah, it's supposed to be looked at from this
You
angle.
don't actually have to make a roof.
Yeah, I just ran out of tiles and 2 days before I had to be done, so there was no way around it. I couldn't buy any more on Bricklink or something, so 48 by 48 base plate it was.
Very respectable. And I like the idea of like using sketch models to kind of sort of give you an inkling of like, or just an idea of what you should or how feasible it is to actually build it. So you kind of created all these different sketch models and then sort of were able to see, oh, well, this is actually possible and we're going to do it.
Yes, indeed. I think it's important if you build something that big that you know if something is working out and that not like 80% down the way you decide, oh no, that doesn't really work that well and I have to get new bricks or something. So it was very helpful to know like months before that, oh, this was how I was going to build the wall, or that's how I'm going to build the trees. And for the trees I had to order a ton of parts, so it was obviously very, very handy to know what I needed and if it was working. And so sketch models is a great idea to plan something that big, I think.
Now, did you did you draw out any sort of like model ideas, or was it really just kind of you and the brick as opposed to sort of drawing things and making like schematics and stuff like that?
I think I drew like a blueprint of something, or like a top-down view, but I think that was all. Like I went straight to the brick because that's something I'm most comfortable with, and I just find it easier to grab what I have and to work with something physically than having to draw it and then having to translate it into brick.
Sure, sure.
Mm-hmm. And have you done other video game builds in the past? Is this something kind of a theme that you like building in?
I think the Fallout thing was the first one. I generally don't mind it because video games have a very creative, very open, very different kind of setting most of the time. But I just didn't touch it yet. Again, I think so. The Fallout 4 gas station is like the only video game build that I have so far, I think.
Okay, well, yeah, I think it turned out great for your first video game build. So, very neat build there. And did you say you had a chance to display this at some shows you went to?
I only displayed it in one show because I don't have the space to keep it together for a long while. And it was in Munich. It's in the biannual event Bricking Bavaria, which is one of the biggest events in Germany. And it was part of our lugs layout, and it just looked amazing there because there was like I guess you remember the Jurassic World layout that Markus 1984 and Disco 86 did. It was blogged like all over the place. It was there, and my Fallout thing was there, and three very, very good models. So we had like the best place, I guess, in the whole event venue or something. So it was just like very awesome to be in this great company and to display it properly because. It was just the table where like there was Star Wars, there was Jurassic World, there was a computer game, there was everything. So it was like a cool mix of everything. While the whole other venue was filled with city and trains and cars. You know how the general events goes.
Of course. But then you have these stellar, like the famous creations. Everyone's I like that.
I didn't put it up for public vote for a prize because I thought it was too niche and everybody complained about that. So I guess people liked it.
Very nice. And what time of year is Bricking Bavaria held?
It's every 2 years in November. It's part of a big toy fair toy event kind of thing in Munich, and every second year they do a very like on the years in between they do a small event in a town nearby. That's not very advertised that bigly because the venue is not that big, but every 2 years, Brick in Bavaria is the place to be in November in Munich.
I see. So it's like a 1 year off, and then smaller, and then big, and then small, and then big.
It's just a very big event, and if you talk with the event organizers and the guys who have to plan it and have to work for it, it's just a very, very massive task. So they just can't do it every single year. It's too much to handle.
Totally. And then moving on to another one of your models, and I'm going to mispronounce this. I have a hunch. Frauenkirche Dresden?
Yeah, that's close to perfect.
Okay. And beautiful build. This is a cathedral in Dresden, correct? Germany?
Yep.
And this is something that you brought to Brickworld Chicago. I think I remember seeing this, right?
Yeah.
So how does this model transport? This it's obviously not like the size of some Dresden cathedral models out there, but this is obviously not a sizable creation. Do you kind of break it down to fit into a suitcase?
Like the transporting the model to convention is the biggest pain ever. That's actually the reason why I broke it down after the last event where I brought it to, because I was so annoyed having to set it up and set it down all the time. It breaks down into, like, let's say on the trip to Chicago, it broke down in about 1,400 modules, which is bricks, because Lufthansa decided to completely shred it. Usually I break it down into modules, like little segments. You can pull, you can divide the walls into like 12 different modules, and the dome comes apart in 4 or 5 different modules. So it is very modular, and if you pack it properly, I guess there are some airlines that are able to not kill it completely. But when I brought it to Chicago, it was in bits, and I spent like 4 hours or 5 hours in my room just having to reassemble it. And it wasn't too easy because I built it like 2 years ago, so I had no idea which part was going. So I had to use my photo on Flickr and my L-Draw model and all that kind of stuff to figure out where this 1x3 plate was going that was left over in the end. And that actually happened to me once before when I was flying to Norway to exhibit it there. So Lufthansa killed it again. No, I think it was Norwegian Airlines or something. Doesn't matter. So I actually had to rebuild it twice completely. And every time there's like a little piles of bricks that is left over.
You were
I have
more
no
efficient.
idea where
That's
they
what
come
that
from.
means. You are more efficient. You did a better build when you rebuild it, and then you have pieces left over. That means you made it better. You made it more efficient.
It's more efficient, I guess. Yes,
Yeah.
totally. But yeah, displaying that at convention is hell. Same for my other church, which is even more intricate. So last year, after the event in Munich I talked about, I killed both. I destroyed both, so I don't have to set them up anymore because I just couldn't do it. Like, you sit there for an hour putting module into module into module, and then something doesn't quite add up, and you have to rebuild it, and it just takes too much time of an event where I want to spend time with people, not with my builds.
Certainly. And now, we hinted at this earlier, but you are not the first person to build the Dresden Cathedral out of Lego. There is a massive model by, is it Holger Mattes?
Yes, that's him, yeah.
And what is it, 135 centimeters tall or something like that? Did that model inspire you or help you in any way when you were building yours?
The thing is, I decided to build this model for a contest, so I was forced, or I was asked to build my most favorite building from Germany, and I was in Dresden years ago when I was younger, and I found it very impressive, so I decided, oh yeah, let's build that model. And then I was obviously looking around the internet for blueprints, for scale drawings, for photos, for everything. And there was this one website where I found everything, and coincidentally that was Holger's website where he displayed his like massive minifigure scale Frauenkirche. And he had all the blueprints, all the radiuses, all the different angles. So I massively used this website just to have the correct measurements and the correct angles, and to know if my architecture scale version was true to the original. So I was totally aware that he built that model, of course. And 2 years later, or I think 1 year later, I ran into him in Legoland, I think, and we got talking, and coincidentally I built both the churches that he had built in minifigure scale, but in architecture scale. without without planning that. It was just bare coincidence, I guess. So it's one of those funny details that that connects you with other AFOLs, I guess. But his website was a big help. I have to acknowledge that, yes.
I remember seeing that church for the first time. I don't know, back, this model's been around since, what, 2009, something like that? Or
I think it is way older. But,
way older, yeah.
Yeah, he was very active years ago, and then he had a dark age in between. So I think it's possibly 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that. I'm not quite sure.
I remember seeing that for the first time whenever I saw it, and just like, what in the world?
It is massive. I never saw it in person, sadly.
Oh, so where is it still in existence? Do you happen to know, or?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know.
See that I would hope that would just be in the Dresden Cathedral, you know, just like sitting in the lobby or something. Oh well. Very cool. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are some really neat builds, and I'll make sure to include links to all the builds we talked about in the description of this video, so if you want to check out more of Markus's builds, the ones we talked about, definitely do that, and I'll have a Flickr page there as well, so you can see all of that. And now, Markus, we've talked a little bit about some of the events you've done over the years. If you can talk some more about that, do you have like kind of a usual schedule, events you try to hit every year?
There is the Fan Weekend Scareback that I try to hit every year in September, end of September, and I try to make a Norwegian event every year ever since I was there last year for the first time. And there's the Brick in Bavaria every 2 years that I can't really miss. Like 2 years ago, I flew in. I skipped college for a week. So there are certain events I try to do every year, but I try to make it to very, very new and different events every year as well. Like this year, I'm going to for the first time to Sweden, for example, to check out an event. And then there's the Fan Weekend in Portugal, where I'm going to be at. And hopefully this summer we went to Croatia, so I just to try to be as international as possible to meet as many new AFOLs, I guess. So I don't really have a strict guideline apart from like those 3 events I mentioned. But yeah, Scareback, that's like the one place I'm every year.
So how was Scareback? What is that like? I keep hearing it from people like third-hand accounts. It just sounds amazing, like crazy, I guess you could say.
Yeah, Scareback is amazing. It's the most international event in Europe. I guess you could compare it to. I don't think you can compare it to Brickworld because Brickworld is much more massive. But Fan Week and Scareback is just imagine a bunch of AFOLs renting a bunch of caravans or cabins in some kind of holiday resort or something, and in the midst of that there is one big gym, I guess, and that's swamped with AFOL builds, and people come from all over the place, from all over Europe. There are people flying in from Ireland, there are people coming from the north of Norway, there are people coming from Croatia or Portugal, or every year there are coming more Asians, for example. So it's like drawing in everybody because it's like very close to the capital of Lego. There you can meet lots of designers. 2 years ago, and last year Lego did some kind of workshops with the people that attended. Like Jamie Burrard did a presentation on his amusement park ride, for example. Stuff like that. It's just a whole package that is very cool. And obviously it's the best place to meet a lot of different AFOLs from very different countries. In one location, so that just makes it so much fun every single year.
Definitely. And so, I mean, what does like the schedule look like? I guess you could say, like day 1, 2, 3. What is the kind of rundown? Does it have like this pattern to it? Is it just kind of the same thing every day?
I'm not sure if I could call it a schedule. Most people arrive on Thursday afternoon, and then we spend the evening hanging out with each other, with befriended lugs or with friends from all over the place, like usually barbecuing or something. Friday is used for setup, like it's for checking in, like getting your brick badge and your little goodie bag or something, and then you spend the day setting up your model. The Friday evening is for get together again. It's just very, very loose, very friendly. And then Saturday and Sunday is a public exhibition for the local interested people, I guess. But it's even though I say it's an exhibition, it's very informal. Like it's very AFOL centered. So even though there are people there visiting and checking out the models, it's basically the majority is AFOLs looking at other AFOLs models, and that makes it so cool because you can just approach everyone and just talk about the models and just check them out in person, while you don't have to sit behind like you don't have to sit in your box all day and protect your model or something and talk to the public. You can walk around yourself and check everything out, and that makes it so great.
So very open, just kind of this sort of free roaming, like
yeah, very open, very friendly, very laid back. That's the weekend, and basically Sunday evening is teardown, and most people stay Monday. Monday whole day. Usually we do something in Billund, like going to the Legoland park or something. Last year there was a workshop instead. And in the evening just a very relaxed hangout, and then I usually drive back on the Tuesday, and then it's another 10-hour drive home, and I don't mind it at all because it's so much worth it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, 10 hours, that's not too crazy, not too crazy.
Yeah, I guess the distances are a tiny bit different in the US, but 10 hours in Europe, that gets you pretty much everywhere.
Definitely. Oh yeah, 10 hours will get you to a cornfield in Iowa in the United States. But yeah, you can go very cool places in 10 hours in Europe. And now this is now no longer the only fan weekend in Europe, right? There's a new one. Last week we had Miguel on the show talking about the new Portugal fan weekend. Markus, I hear that you're involved somehow. Would you like to shed some light on that?
Yeah, sure. I'm part of the international steering group, so I'm pulling all the strings in the background. Less the Portuguese strings than the international ones. Miguel is taking care of that very, very well in Portugal. And yes, it's a second fan weekend. Lego wants to support the creation of new fan weekends that bring AFOLs together from all places. They have a new program called the Hub Support Program, I think it's called, and it's basically just there to support the creation of multinational, international events where people from various different countries and lugs meet up for a couple of days in a cool location, hang out, have workshops, have interesting things to do. And that's the spirit. Very international, very relaxed, very AFOL-centric, and I hope people are having fun in June. Like that's the reason why I'm doing that, because it's for the people. They hopefully they love it.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. And I think I noticed on the registration they just hit 100 registrants for the event, so that's really cool. Some more people are signing up. If you haven't, definitely check that out, and like Matthew mentioned, you can check out our interview with Miguel as well. He goes into a lot of in-depth about what the event will be like and everything if you're interested in seeing that, but it looks like it should be a really neat event. So Markus, will you be bringing some builds to display?
I'm not sure what to bring it, but I always bring something to an event, so I'll be displaying something. I just can't say what yet because I'm constantly building something new, so probably will be something that I built in June, 2 weeks before the event.
Mm-hmm. Very neat. So yeah, that should be a really cool event there. So then kind of related to that, you were talking about how you get kind of builders from all over Europe and kind of all over the world at these events. It's always interesting to talk about, what's the difference between maybe American builders, European builders, even Asian builders. Have you noticed that the different events you've been to? I think you've been to Brick World Chicago in America, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I don't know if you've noticed any big differences there. Anything you can talk about?
Personally, obviously that's just my personal opinion. I don't want to step on anyone's toes or something, but I find that the building standard, the quality of building is much higher in the States than, for example, in Europe. The Asians are very, very good, but they have a distinctively different style of building. They are much more building with showing studs, for example, very various plates and snod-based buildings. But the Americans, they just excel at almost everything. They have cool train layouts. They have insane space builds. And I'm sorry if I say Americans because obviously the Canadians are part of that crowd. But I just find that the whole community over there is much more skilled, much more able to pull off something at a bigger scale that is cool, that has some flair or something, and you kind of miss this at European events. What I also find very inspiring is the amount of collaboration that I saw, for example, at Brickworld. That seems to be something that is quite normal over in the States. Like you have those big train lugs where everybody builds a module, or you have those you have Virtual Lug where everybody builds something of a bigger layout, and then it becomes this massive thing that is very, very inspiring. But you don't really have that over here in Europe. In Europe, it seems that everybody builds in his basement and on his own, and then brings his own stuff to the event. But there's nothing really that screams collaboration in Europe. You every now and then have a classic space or moon base layout, but that's about it.
Do you think like external factors can contribute to this? Like Americans maybe have like big basements in like the middle of nowhere, and so cold winters perhaps, so they're able to kind of build big things. And then they're lonely because they're in America and they're stuck in their basement in the middle of nowhere. So they call up their friend who also builds with Lego, and then they put together their modules. And then the Europeans are too busy like having fun in their plazas and like taking trams to go to dinner with their neighbors and friends from the community, so they don't have time to collaborate with people on builds. I'm just saying completely ludicrous things. Don't pay any attention to me. But what do you think? What external factors maybe contribute to like all of these?
I think there are some factors, yes, but the most basic factor is actually language. I think the American or the Canadians or whatever they are over there, they are just more skilled because they speak the same language. Like I talk about being on international events in Europe, but that's something that is not really the norm. Like most people stay in their events in their own country where they have friends that speak the same language, because not everybody is able to communicate in English fluently, for example. Or if you're in Scareback, that's usually the international crowd. There's no one that doesn't really speak English or something. So it's a quite, I wouldn't say elitist circle, but it's a very special circle of AFOLs. So in Germany, for example, the only people who would collaborate would be Germans. But since they probably don't share the same things or are very, very far away from each other, they don't collaborate. But in the States, they are just more, like, they speak the same language, so there are no issues in communication. They can just do stuff over the internet as they plan. That's something that's not really too what's the word? Like people don't do that over here for some reason. It might be that the general age of AFOLs is the age group is different or something. Because American AFOLs or TFOLs, there's a much larger base of teenage or younger builders than we have here, I think. And that might also be something that comes down to that goes into the whole collaboration or very different style of building, because they are just used to the internet. Like I'm talking to you guys, I don't think a German AFOL or the average German AFOL, no offense, would do that, because he's just way older and might not be that familiar with the whole internet thingy or with the whole computer deal.
I think that's a very good analysis, and I think that the point about language is very, very important. I didn't even think about that, but like if the United States was Europe, for instance, like Josh is in Indiana and I'm in North Carolina, I would probably be speaking a different language than him. We have this whole cultural barrier, massive,
right.
There's like definitely having everyone speaking the same language, kind of relatively on the same page. Fosters easy collaboration, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very good point. Very good point. And technology certainly worth considering as well.
And so, is that something you mentioned that there's kind of a lack of collaborative builds? Have you tried to push for more collaborative builds yourself, or is that something you try to get involved in very often at the shows you go to?
I used to do some collaborative build every year for the Scareback Fanny Weekend together with a friend of mine, but it's still very hard to get more people together, because you need to meet certain qualities to be able to form a coherent collaborative display, because people need to have the same skill set or the same, like the builds need to have a similar look so they can work together. So you can't really put, I don't know, a hardcore train builder together with a hardcore train guy, a hardcore space guy, because their style might clash too much. So so far I did two collaborative builds, and they were great fun, even though the end result might not have been as cool or as amazing as we planned it to be. But it was great fun to work on something together, and I hopefully can do that again in the future. It's always very, very, very entertaining. It also helps yourself as a builder, because if there are various people working on the same projects, it obviously leads to criticism, and it obviously pushes your own skills further. Or you rework something and make it cooler because person X said, "Oh, try this" or something. And I enjoy it a lot, but it's not really too feasible over here. I fear or I find.
Totally, totally. And so now, maybe kind of moving on to the future, what kind of projects are you sort of planning or maybe thinking about that you'd be willing to kind of share with us?
The issue with me is that if something doesn't work out, I usually scrap it completely. But I'm currently working on an Optimus Prime that is fully transformable. So not Lego at all, but it's going to be, like, I have the head lying around. The head is this big, so the whole thing will be like, I don't know. It will be huge. And that's like one of the things I'm working on. Everything else is just very spontaneous. That doesn't need work over a certain amount of time. So I'm afraid I can't really tell you guys that much about my future projects because they usually just come up in an instant and then I just build them.
It's a beautiful thing to just kind of, poof, and you have something. So we'll look forward to seeing more from you. Very cool, very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that should be neat to see some more there. And something interesting that we kind of wanted to talk to you about is kind of, you've obviously been in the community for a few years now and a really prolific builder. Where do you kind of see the broader LEGO community heading at this point in time? As you've been involved, have you seen some changes over the years? And is there kind of do you feel like the community is eventually going to maybe reach like a peak point with like a lot of people involved and eventually start going down as it becomes less popular or anything like that? Do you see that in the future?
A very interesting and difficult question. Obviously, we're getting more and more AFOs. Like the crowd is getting bigger and bigger every year. More and more lugs are forming themselves. So the crowd is getting bigger and bigger every year. I guess the result of that is more like people will split up into their own special kind of thing that they're doing. So I don't know how it's in the States, but here in Europe we usually have lugs that are like one country has one lug, and then we have smaller lugs that are theme-centric. Like in Germany we have, for example, Tausend Steine that is catering to basically everything. Then we have my own lug, Imperium Steine, which is Star Wars and all the stuff that the normal people don't do, like everything but train and city. That's basically our field. And then there is a lug that does train, so that does Technic. I'm sorry. So I think it's going to be more and more going to be like it's going more down and down that road where everybody makes up his own, starts his own club or something because they like space or something, because the crowd is getting bigger and bigger. In the end, I don't think it might reach a peak too soon because it's a cool hobby that is very diverse and you can always express yourself. But that's obviously way into the future because I don't think LEGO is producing less stuff every year. They're doing the opposite. So it will attract more people. Thanks to the LEGO movie last year or 2 years ago, there was a huge soar, and that might come again with the next one. So there will be more. It will be more diverse. I think that's a good thing because in the end, it enriches the community. But we'll have to see where this whole thing goes, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah, so you still see more room in the future then for more new builders coming in and more lugs, that type of thing in the future.
Certainly, yeah.
Is peak LEGO coming anytime soon?
I doubt it. Like not in the next 5 years or something, because there's so much stuff that they can still do, that they can like work on, and the fan community is still growing. I don't think there's a peak anytime soon. Like events might get too big over time, but anything else, I don't think there will be any kind of peak.
When I sort of think about that concept, I always kind of have to remind myself that like Lego set in of itself, even a Lego brick, I guess you could say, is really not the end product. It's like the Lego company. I look at the Lego company as more of like almost like a crayon company, or like they make paints, for artists, or it's like they're the company that makes like clay or something, and it's just a material that allows creativity to kind of happen, as opposed to Beanie Babies, which all you can really do is just put them on a shelf and look at them. So I think that alone kind of makes me think that LEGO does have this kind of enduring kind of value, and I don't know, so people's fascination with the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point because Lego is the toy of endless possibilities in the end. So you can always create something new, or they just come up with a new brick and that adds a gazillion possibilities. But in the end, it's just, even for kids, it's just the material to showcase their creativity, I guess. So I don't think there will be a peak anytime soon, as we said.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And something I wanted to make sure we asked you about before you left was, do you have a kind of favorite fan-created MOC? So I'm sure as over the years you've been in the community, you've seen a lot of builds. Is there one that really stands out to you as one of your favorites that you've seen another builder do?
There is a series of Bionicle-based creations from Nicolas Vaz. He goes by the name of Brick Thing on Flickr. And one of them is, I think it's called Onuta or something. And it's just, yeah, there it is. It's just a very, very cool build that combines so many different things that are not Lego into a creation that is obviously Lego. And I just love how organic the whole thing is, and it really stands out of the crowd of usual builds, if I'm allowed to say that, because it's just so different and so well executed and well presented. And Nick did a very, very good job with that. And it's just one of the creations I tend to come back to and admire, because there's just so much to see and so much creative parts usage, and just very, very, just a very masterful creation, I'd say.
It certainly has like a wild look to it, totally uncommon, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very different, and I guess that's what I love about it, because there's only a tiny group of builders that do Bionicle-based stuff, and then even fewer of them merge to do different systems that Lego produces, like Bionicle and Basic and System and all that stuff. And Nick just excels at that. Like all the other builds that he did, they push the boundaries between the themes and what's possible, and it's just like, it's very inspiring to see creations like that, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And I can understand. It definitely looks like some of the kind of stuff you do as far as the kind of After Effects you added with the graphics around the build and that type of stuff, more than just like a photograph of the build by itself, which like you were talking about earlier in the show, definitely adds a lot to a build as well.
Certainly, I think Nick was actually the one person that inspired me most to do them, because he started doing that a couple of years ago, and it was just so well done, and it added so much. And then I just figured, let's try this myself, and it works out very well. So I can certainly, like, if you have the skills, try it out. If you don't have the skills, maybe still try it out and learn the skills, because it's obviously learning by doing, but it adds so much in the end, and it makes the model more graspable, I guess. So very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a really neat build, and I'll make sure to include a link to that along with all the other builds that we talked about here on the show with you, Markus, in the description of this video. So if people want to check that out, I definitely encourage you to start following Markus on Flickr. Keep up to date with all of his latest builds that he'll be working on, and maybe try to catch him at a show sometime this year. What's the next show you'll be at?
The next show is going to be the annual Swebrick event in Sweden at the end of the month. So that's where I'll be.
Okay, very neat. So we really appreciate you joining us on the show, Markus. It's been a pleasure talking with you and learning some more about your history with the community and some of your latest builds. Thanks for talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, Markus. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. And thank you to everyone out there for watching. We'll, like I mentioned, have links to everything we talked about in the description of this video, and we will see you soon. Bye.